Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon to all the audience. Thank you very much for being here today, and thank you to ASM for providing the platform for science communication. I'm going to share with you today some thoughts on a very common expression, what a waste. There's a Japanese equivalent over there, which is mottainai, and we find the expression what a waste is quite a common expression in many cultures. So, for the Japanese, the word mottainai means an expression for the sense of regret they feel when something valuable is wasted. Now, historically, when you think about the word mottainai from the Japanese perspective, it is a concept that has been rooted in ancient times. Some have said as far back as the Edo period in the 1603 onwards. The resurgence of this word is in Japan as well as on the global scale came into being when this lady that you see in the picture, Dr. Watari Matai, who introduced it as a word for her rallying call for environmentalism. When she got the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004, she went to Japan the following year and was smitten by the word mottainai, which has the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle, but it has another R, which is respect. So mottainai is now a worldwide movement for environmentalism on reuse, reduce, and recycle. Perhaps the nearest Malay expression may be, oh sayangnya, oh ruginya. Now, talking about words, if we just take the word waste, this is muda in Japanese. And the Malay word for young is also muda in Malay. I'm not referring to any political party. Now, there is also a connection between muda and youth and waste. And you can see this can be attributed to a saying by George Bernard Shaw, youth is wasted on the young, which again represent a rather melancholic feeling of regret about wasting of time on the young. Now, on a personal note, a personal journey that I took when I was muda. And I wrote this in a school magazine. I'm sure all of you still remember, sometimes you have the annual school magazine. This is what I wrote. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher at about 9 years old. Not a bad choice for a 9-year-old, because teaching profession is always relevant, come Industry 4.0 or not. It is always a trusted profession. You know, fire engineers are the first one. Firemen is the first one. And of course, if done with ikhlas and sincerity, it can also be a form of sedekah. But how do you get to be a professional teacher? And this is another quotation that I will always remember. I will not leave you great wealth except education. Is it written by any great scholar? It's a personal reminder by my father, my late father, all the time to us children to be able to go for the best in education. And he is visionary in, being a baby boomer myself, that you should try to open and get the best education that you can have. But I'm a baby boomer, meaning that there is no internet, no Mr. Google, no social media. So my hobbies become books. And inwardly, this is my first door to education or door to knowledge, things on how things work and so on. Fast track, the road led to engineering. It was not love at first sight, but I truly appreciate being an engineer to this day, because engineer can do all of these things, right? Conceive and design processes to produce, transform, and transport material. For a chemical engineer, you do all the way on the supply chain from the laboratory to full-scale production. Of course, you have to know about the basic STEM subjects, chemistry, physics, and biology, and mathematics. And because we are problem solvers on the practical level, we not only rely on natural equation, but we also go for, funny, clumsy looking empirical solution that provide solutions at the practical level. Now, what are the kind of processes that chemical engineers do? Let's start off, because I said before it's quite versatile. As long as there is process and unit operation, you can call that to be a process industry. I'm sure in your kitchen you will have monosodium glutamate or Ajinomoto. Do you know that this is actually an example of a chemical processing industry that produces crystals of monosodium glutamate from things like sugarcane and so on? They get bugs to work on it, and here there, after some processing, you will get your fine crystal that will flavor your food when you present it to your family. These are other examples of chemical engineering processes that will happen every day in most countries. You have to provide services like wastewater treatment, so that the discharge to the riverine system will be in the proper legal perspective at the minimum compliance. In Malaysia, we have these two industries, oil and gas, which is the big multinational capital industries, and also the glove manufacturing, which proves to be very handy during the COVID situation that we have nowadays. Now, chemical engineers not only do not have very strong vocabulary in terms of words. We like drawings. So a typical process for a chemical process can be done in blocks diagram with arrows showing inputs and output. In this case, utilities, people, raw materials, to produce things like your core product, your byproduct, and the residual. But where are the wastes? We shall see. Now, I would like you not to run away with the idea that wastes are only physical in nature, something that you can feel, you can touch, you can smell. Really, waste goes beyond just physical entities. They can be in terms of motion, in terms of time, not proper scheduling of your processes, transportation, and most of all, wasted potential of the people who are involved in the process. You remember I said earlier I wanted to be a teacher. Guess what? Can you find me in the picture? Of course, I'm not there. This is very young staff of a school. But what do you see? They are wearing batik, and this is normally called batik cikgu. So what about the batik industry? Is it a process industry? First of all, we have to recognize a few attributes of the batik processing industry. It is recognized as a cottage and heritage industry, meaning that compared to the big guns like MNCs of oil and gas, they are the very small family-like businesses, normally using 2 to 4 people in the family under their houses. The defining difference of batik as compared to other textile is the use of wax as the resist material to create patterns. And it's actually a piece of art. So you have the artisans over here, the skilled people. You have to market it because you don't have to wear batik to work. But of course, we would like you to wear to work. But there are market challenges in terms of the batik industry. And what I'm going to share most today is about the technology that you find in the batik. It is quite low tech. What shall we do about it? Now, I know there are many slides in here. The idea is not for you to see it one by one. It is a whole process cycle of batik coming in from the supply of the raw materials right down to distribution. But along the way, you're going to see the raw materials is really quite simple. Simply cloth, silk, polyester, cotton. Then the creation of the patterns through various forms of dyeing. But before you can get the pattern, you have to do a lot of washing. This is batik block, which means that you have to do some kind of patterns using a block, a chop. And then you can see here the fixation process to fix the colors of the patterns onto the batik. But all along, you're going to have things that you have to do like washing. And there's a lot of water usage in the batik industry. But what do consumers see at the front end? The batik showroom will show brilliant examples of patterns of batik that is the work of the artisans in terms of the patterns for the ladies, not forgetting the shirts for the men as well. Now, how can we help the batik industry? My perspective now is from the technology perspective. You know, during the processing of the batik, we have the product, which we would like to have this attribute. It should be affordable. It should be fair trade, meaning that the situation that the workers are doing can be considered to be safe, high quality, eco-friendly. What are the things that goes into a batik? Raw materials, the premise itself, things like water that we use for rinsing, and of course the workers itself. Now, I was fortunate in 2012 for about 2 years, I was involved as the lead consultant for the Clean Batik Initiative, which is a grant funded by EU Asia Link. We went on the ground to about 100 batik factories in Kelantan and Terengganu, trying to do things at the low-hanging fruits end that will result in better workplace safety and also the environment. This is what you see as a result of the dipping and the washing of the colors and so on. Strong colors like blue over here, you will see that in vats that are there under in the premises of the batik factory, which is really very close by to where the house owner is, and you can see this all the time. And you may wonder, where does this batik wastewater go? Being a small or micro industry, they would not have the capacity to build a proper waste treatment plant. So in the end, you will find that they can end up in rivers. Here you can see the colors of the wastewater that is being diverted into the river. It can also sometimes go into just soil. And they contain quite nasty stuff. Of course, you have the wax, the chemical residues, and the dyes, which can be organic and inorganic. For those of you who still remember your chemistry, this chicken wire formula thing of the different dyes will show the inherent toxicity of some of these dyes that are being used. So how can we help them? What are the steps to improve the process? If you still remember what I was talking about earlier about the process itself, the inputs and the byproducts, you can do a lot of things in terms of minimizing the utilities. You can empower the people. You can optimize the raw material. The byproducts has something to do with the functionality and the cost effectiveness, together with special attributes like green, friendly processing. And of course, what I would like to talk here also is about the waste product. I was involved with a couple of years during that time with few students on trying to provide innovative solutions to the batik people, with special considerations of them being SMEs. They do not have money, the capacity is small, it's not like a large concern. And I think because Prof. Vicky did not come earlier, she also has a solution in terms of the fungal enzyme extraction to get rid of the dyes. But what is special about batik wastewater is, unlike other wastewater, they have wax. And I think the simplest way that the pembatiks have done in terms of the wax is really to recover them by putting the water aside during the night and then scouring it off. What we try to do here is to provide a hybrid physical pre-treatment, because I think the key to wastewater treatment in the batik is, of course, you want to practice the 3R, so you want to recover the wax, which you can see here floating at the top, and then later to use membrane technology in some form to get rid of the dyes. The work is still in progress, and I still think there's a lot more innovations to be done to meet the requirements of the batik people. In general then, how should waste be managed? It goes back to reason that if we follow the concept of Motainai, the different R's are here. We should try to reduce, minimize the amount of waste that is produced, reuse materials more than once, recycle to make way for new products, recover energy and materials from the waste, and lastly, if we have to dispose, then it should be done in a safe way, either to the landfill and so on. You may also note that this is an inverted triangle, meaning that the most desirable option should be done at the greatest level and with the maximum effort, with the least desirable option resulting in the disposal of the waste. We talk about circular economy. That is a good way forward to go as well. Now, I was quite intrigued, or I had a keen observation on the batik people in Kelantan, meaning that they had this business acumen that, they try to save as much as possible. But the true cost of the waste actually is not always seen. As you can see here, according to one report, the true cost of the waste can be as much as 4% of the turnover. Is the normal analogy that you do for the iceberg. What you see on the top not necessarily represent the whole. So waste is not simply material that is access to requirement. It represents the loss of valuable organization assets, and really waste are misplaced resources. So how do we go about better stewardship of waste? I think there's an FB question already asking about this as well. So the evolution of attitude as we go along towards environmental issues has been all the way about passive environmental protection, meaning that non-compliance and negative environmental impacts on environment. Then we came back to a little bit of sense, in the sense that we dirty our environment and then we clean up. And this is what we call end of pipe solution. Still not good enough because this is so inefficient. And then later there are strategies like cleaner production, waste minimization, circular economy, which then began to see light of day in terms of the cost effectiveness, the compliance, as well as more efficient use of raw materials and energy. So we come back to the question, how do you view waste? Do you accept that waste is there? It comes from somewhere and always will. That the environment is a big trash can. And remember, waste are not only produced by industries like this and that. What about you and me? This is a popular Great Pacific garbage trash that's floating around, and this comes from everyday materials that you and I use. And what about now in the COVID period pandemic? This is often something that you can find being done by responsible citizens. What then is the definition of waste? Are waste an act of wasting merely human invention? Really, waste does not exist in nature. Everything in nature has a purpose. But we also have to recognize that wasting results in long-term harmful consequences for both ourselves, nature, and our pocket. The simple take-home message is that you can see here in this diagram, the mind is a precious thing to waste. What you think here will go to your heart, and what you feel also goes back to your what you think. So a mind is a precious thing to waste. Get an education. It doesn't have to be formal. It can also be informal. Be empowered by the knowledge that you have. Act on the knowledge you gain. Don't waste your potential, and be a lifelong learner. And with that, thank you very much. I must say thank you to Dr. Kai, who has been instrumental in giving tips on how to do science communication. And with that, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ikaw yung pistil.